Hi, everyone. So, in this video, I'm just going to be explaining what you're doing for writing project number two, the Food and Identity Project. So, we've had some readings and some videos about food. You've already written some about food. You should have done, if you're looking at this, you should have already completed your short writing assignment about food and identity. Again, just like we did before with project number one, that's there to kind of prepare you, to kind of get you thinking about some things that you could potentially be writing about. You don't have to use the topic that you had for that, but it's definitely possible for you to do that. So let's look at the specifics of what it is I'm asking you to do for this project, some things that you need to be aware of. So for this unit, we've been exploring how food can be a way of helping us understand who we are as individuals, who we are in our families, and who we are in our larger cultural community. So we just looked at different ways in which food can do that at all those different potential levels. So for writing project number two, you will need to explore how a particular food contributes to either your sense of yourself as an individual, to your connection to others, either in your family, neighborhood, ethnic group, country, or some other community. So it's important that you can talk about this at either level, at any level. You can talk about what it means for you as an individual. And so that's why we can look at something like Cheetos Flamin' Hot's Made Me Who I Am. That's not about ethnicity. It's not about about country. It's not about anything like that. It's about themselves individually. I had as an extra thing that you could look at. I keep a pack of Kraft singles in the fridge. That's also very personal about food. So just keep that in mind that you can talk about things that are personal, but you can, of course, if you want to talk about something that connects you to your neighborhood. That's why we were looking at something like a chopped cheese. That is a very New York institution. People outside of New York don't know what a chopped cheese is. And so, do we have something that connects us to the city? You might have something more local to your neighborhood. That's great. Anything to whatever your ethnic group, your country, whatever community is that you might be in, a religious community, whatever it is, if there's some food that draws all that together, then you're able to talk about that. So, at any level of this, and again, I just want to stress that because sometimes students will say, I don't have a food that connects me to any kind of ethnic community or anything like that. And I'm like, well, but there's food that connects you as an individual, right? So think about whatever it is or whichever level you want to be writing about, you can do that. This assignment must be 1,000 words long, so it's longer than the other one in MLA format, and should have already passed that quiz, so we should be clear about that. This assignment should tell a clear and specific story about how a particular food connects to your personal, familial, or cultural identity. You only need to choose one, right? So just tell that story about whether this is personal, family, or cultural identity. You don't have to. Sometimes students will say, "Do I need to talk about all three of those things?" No, you just talk about one. Uh, um, this assignment must reference at least two of the works on food we're assigned: essays, videos, or the cartoon. The cartoon is I keep a pack of Kraft singles in the fridge, and so if you want to reference that, that's fine. You do not need to use an actual quote, but you should make some reference to the ideas raised in the work. This reference can either show that your experiences are similar to the work or that your experiences are very different to the work, right? So somehow you need to make a reference to that. You can definitely have quotes. The reason that I'm saying that you don't have to have quotes, part of the reason I'm saying that is, you might have a quote, let's say for fish cheeks or crying in H Mart, but you may not necessarily have a quote from the beef patty movie or from the chopped cheese movie. So it might be hard to quote that in the same way. It might be hard to quote on some level from the cartoon or something like that, but you at least need to reference what ideas are being transmitted in those somehow. And so you need to reference at least two of those. By the way, notice that we're kind of building up. I had you have, one essay for the previous assignment. You had to reference one essay. Now I'm having you reference at least two. It's getting a little bit longer. And so I'm making this slightly more complicated as we go through. And to make it even slightly more complicated, for number four, the assignment must contain outside research to help you more completely explore your food. This research can consist of interviews, either with family members or others who have specialized knowledge about the food, such as restaurant owners or employees. The research can also come from sources you find on the internet. However, you cannot cite Wikipedia. This research is meant to supplement your ideas. This is not a report on the food, so this research should not take up more than a single paragraph. Also, this research should be integrated into the rest of your essay. So this is a big difference from what we're talking about. So let's talk about how it is we want to do that. Again, I want you to go out and find some other information. One of the most common things that students will use in this is something like an interview. The reason that they'll use something like an interview is that a lot of times we're talking about a family food. And so people will say, let me interview my grandmother. Let me interview my brother. Let me do something like that to talk about that. So because there's some element of community involved in this, we can interview some of the people from the community to talk about the food, how they feel about that. So that's one of the most common kinds of things. If that's not feasible for you for whatever reasons, there can be other kinds of information that you are going to get. I mean, again, as I say here, you can talk to somebody who works at the restaurant, and they can give you some information on that. And notice that if you look at the films that we have, the chopped cheese film and the beef patty film, you can see in both cases where we're interviewing people. Where they're, in the chopped cheese, we're just interviewing some people who are hanging out outside the bodega. I don't know if you guys know that bodega in Queens. I know where that is, right over in Queens Village. They're interviewing some people who are just hanging outside of the bodega, and they're talking about chopped cheese, right, and getting some information from them about how they think about that. And so you have the opportunity to talk to anybody who is going to be in some ways associated with that food. If you can't get an interview, you can look at other kinds of things, other kinds of information, maybe get some history about the food, something like that. And we can talk about that as you're doing your rough drafts. That's the kind of thing that we can have a conversation about whether or not we think that that's good information or not. As I say down here, this is not a report on the food. I don't want you to say, look, let me tell you everything I know about the food and I'll do some research about it. I want your personal story about the food. The bulk of this essay, the majority of this essay, is you telling a specific story. Notice I say that in number 2. This essay should tell a clear and specific story about how a particular food connects to your personal, familial, or cultural identity. So it is not a report on, let me tell you everything about the history of this food and something like that. You can have some of that, but it should, as I say, this research should not take up more than a single paragraph. It also needs to integrate in. I don't want to feel like we were going along telling the story and then here's some research that I did. That research needs to fit into our understanding of how it is we're supposed to be thinking, how it is that you're thinking about your relationship to this food. Okay, so keep all that in mind. Uh, um, as always, if you have any questions about this, if you're unsure about exactly what you're supposed to be doing with this, send me an email. We can talk about it. Again, you're not jumping right into this. You're going to have an outline and then a rough draft and a final draft. And so at every step of the way, I will be commenting on that, and I'll give you some ideas about whether or not, some direction about whether or not you're moving in the way that you should be moving. So don't worry about that. Jump into it. And again, if you have questions, make sure to ask me. At the bottom of here, I've got the due dates. Those are the same due dates that are on the schedule. So go ahead and just look at those, but you know that those are there. So that's the assignment for writing project number 2, and you can go ahead and get started on your outline.